What's going on, Giants fans? Back at it here with another New York Giants video. And in this video, going to dive into a brief preview of the 2023 free agency for your New York Football Giants. And folks, before I dive into that, make sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at Big Blue Avenue on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can find our account there. Appreciate all the support that we've gotten. And I'm very excited to talk about this. Giants are coming off a heck of a 2022 season where they made the playoffs. They won 10 games, including a playoff game. Joe Schoen had a lot of house money last year when it came to free agency as a new GM, and now he has a lot more wiggle room with the cap situation. And I'm excited to make my predictions, see what positions of need Big Blue needs, where they can upgrade on the roster, who might be a good fit for the scheme on both sides of the ball. But we all know that the two big guys are done. You got Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley out of the way. So 8 and 2-6 are back. They re-signed linebacker Jarrad Davis, and they also re-signed wide receiver Sterling Shepard. And before I get into the external free agents, we'll just talk about a little bit of the Giants' internal UFAs. Shepard re-signed, 30 years old, only played in 3 games last season, according to a source that reported to the New York Post. It will be a 1-year vet minimum deal worth a little bit over $1.1 million. Shepard did catch the first touchdown pass of the season. It was a 65-yard touchdown reception and run against Tennessee Titans. Fortunately, in week 3 for Sterling, he tore his ACL against the Dallas Cowboys. This was shortly after recovering from a ruptured Achilles, where he only played 7 games in 2021. So Shepard's career has been riddled with injuries. A lot of Giants fans have complained about it. When healthy, he's been great, though. He's been a very reliable receiver who doesn't drop passes. He gets a wide target share, very high volume percentage of catches for when it comes to working with Daniel Jones. In 2018, he had a career high 872 yards, and in his rookie year back in 2016, he had 8 touchdown receptions, but since he hasn't had more than 4 in a season. So now when you look at the Giants wide receiver class heading into 2023, it currently sits at this. You have Sterling Shepard, Isaiah Hodgins, and Wan'Dale Robinson on the active roster. 2 of those 3 are coming off torn ACLs in Wan'Dale and Sterling. Post-Galladay cut, the Giants will be sitting at about $20.5 million in cap space. I think with the Sterling Shepard signing, this puts them a little bit below 20 with the cap hit. But I'm looking at our internal free agents, right? So Sterling Shepard's back. Great leader. Love it. Vet minimum deal. Fine. Anything more than that, from a business side, it wouldn't make sense because the Giants want to revamp and improve their wide receiver room. So I think with Shepard coming back, that means Darius Slayton and Richie James are both likely gone. Now, the big question for me comes on the offensive line. I have a feeling one of these 2 guys are coming back. The question is, will it be Nick Gates or John Feliciano? I love Nick Gates, undrafted free agent in 2018. I think he's the better player of the 2. He's also younger. He's only 27, where Feliciano is 30, 31. I also thought Gates had a better season, but his value might be a little higher than John Feliciano's. He may cost the Giants more money. I'm not sure what they're going to do. If I had to pick one, I would pick Nick Gates. I think he's better in pass protection, and center is sort of where he performs best, in my opinion. A lot of people argued guard, including myself, a year or 2 ago, but after seeing him at center when he gets the opportunities, he really is the anchor of that offensive line. I'd love to see the Giants bring back Jihad Ward as well. He's a player I'd like to see come back. He definitely helped with the development of Kayvon Thibodeau, knowing Wink Martindale's defense. A good player to have. I do think Casey Kreiter comes back, solid long snapper, who's a former Pro Bowler. He's been on the team for a few years now. I do think Jamie Gillan, the punter, winds up coming back. Now, personally, I wasn't a big fan of his. His punts lacked hang time, and he couldn't down opponents inside the 20 at a consistent rate. So my hope for Gillan is that he improves. He's only turning 26, I believe, this year. So it'll be interesting to see how Gillan bounces back in 2023. Not saying he had a bad year, but I definitely thought his numbers could have been a little better. And then the big domino here is Julian Love, right? What do the Giants do with him? What do the Giants do with Darius Slayton? Those are probably the two biggest names left on the UFA market. Personally, I think you let both of them walk. Darius Slayton has been a solid receiver, been known for some great catches and some not so good drops that have cost Big Blue some games. When you look at Julian Love, really didn't have a role on the defense up until this year. Previously, they used him in a lot of 3-box safety sets. He filled in when Jabril Peppers and Xavier McKinney dealt with some injuries. But he's an old school type of player that I'd love to bring back. You know, Bill Parcells would have loved Julian Love, but it's tough. I don't know what his market will demand. Do the Giants trust Dane Belton to step into his role? Belton did have 2 interceptions this season when he got some opportunities. I happen to like Dane Belton a lot. I think he could slide into Julian Love's role. And if you want to, make Belton the starter, you move on from Julian Love. You might want to save that money towards guys like McKinney. Andrew Thomas is another guy you have to worry about in a year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the New York Giants come this free agency period. Those are my predictions with the in-house guys. Now, the biggest weaknesses for the Giants on their roster, we can all agree, wide receiver, interior offensive line, and linebacker. Those are the 3 biggest holes on the team. I don't think corner is as big of a weakness as people think. The Giants happen to like Cordell Flott a lot. You have Adoree Jackson as your corner number 1. You definitely want to upgrade corner number 2, but that's a premium position that I think you want to address in the draft. I wouldn't be mad if the Giants signed a corner, a veteran guy, but I would put that on the back burner. I also think interior defensive line might be a little bit more important than corner as well. But let's get through some free agents that I think might potentially fit for the New York Football Giants. Center is the most important position that we're missing. If they bring Nick Gates or John Feliciano back, I do think there should be some competition, whether they draft a center in John Michael Schmitz or Luke Weipler, or if they go out and get one of these guys. Connor McGovern, the center for the Jets, 29 years old, a 2016 fifth-round pick by the Denver Broncos, started all 17 games for Gang Green this past season, played every offensive snap, and was the 10th ranked center on Pro Football Focus. Better run blocker than pass blocker, but he is capable. He does not have too many flaws to his game, pretty quick footwork. Forward interior offensive lineman, I'd like to see him have a little bit more strength on some of his combo blocks, as where we see with Nick Gates and John Feliciano, that's not really an issue. But I think Connor McGovern could be a nice stopgap option, and you could draft a guy to put behind them if the Giants decide to go externally here. A guy that I think is an upgrade from both Nick Gates and John Feliciano is Bradley Bozeman, and I'll explain why. He was the 19th ranked center on Pro Football Focus, 28 years old, a 6th-round pick back in 2018, the same draft class as Nick Gates, even though Gates wasn't drafted. He played in 17 games with 11 starts last year. His first 4 years were with the Baltimore Ravens, and this is a guy who never commits penalties. He had 0 penalties in 2021 when he was the starting center for Baltimore. He fixed a lot of their problems at center that they had in 2020. They moved him from guard to center. I think he could be a really good option. He wound up with the Panthers this season. I would love to see him in Big Blue. I don't think the Giants sign him. The real prize would be the guy that the Titans just released in Ben Jones. I would love to get Ben Jones. He is 33 years old. I know that age might concern some people, but he was the 9th ranked center in Pro Football Focus. He is an elite run blocker, and he is an above average pass blocker. I like him a lot. I tend to think that Ben Jones is the best center on the market right now, but he did cost Tennessee a lot of money, and he would probably cost the Giants a lot of money. I'm not so sure you want to go out and spend the bank on Ben Jones. I think the most likely situation is that the Giants bring back either Nick Gates or John Feliciano, and they either sign a Connor McGovern or they go ahead in the draft and address it on day 2. So we will see what happens there. I threw one guard in here because he's been linked to us a little bit. It's Ben Powers. I know the Giants drafted 2 guards last year out of North Carolina, and they have Shane Lemieux still on the roster. Mark Lewinsky is the starting right guard. So the real question is who starts at left guard next. The Giants' biggest weakness was they couldn't protect on the interior offensive line this year. If you're going to compete in the NFC East against the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys, you have to be able to protect. And I think Ben Powers is capable. He is a nasty, old-school hog molly. I like him a lot. I don't think Baltimore will have enough money to retain him. I think you can get Powers on a $4 to $6 million deal. If the Giants wanted to bring him in at left guard, that would pretty much solidify him starting. Shane Lemieux has dealt with too many injuries for me to say, I'm cool with him starting at left guard again this year. Unless there's an injury, I would prefer Lemieux not start at left guard next year. I would like to upgrade there. I'm not sure I'm sold on either of those North Carolina guards. Either McKeithen is coming off a torn ACL, and then Josh Ozudu, who I never really liked. I think Ben Powers would be an upgrade over everybody. That's if they were to sign a guard. I think ultimately, out of these 4, Connor McGovern is the most realistic if they were to go external. One guy I do think the Giants have a legit chance of signing, and this will excite some people. So we know the Giants franchise tag Saquon Barkley, but the Giants could use a backup. Matt Breida is an unrestricted free agent. Gary Brightwell is more of a special teamer. Yes, the Giants could draft a running back too in the draft, but we know Barkley isn't at – it's tough. He's 26. You don't know how much he has left in his legs. You want a guy who could potentially alleviate some pressure off of him and be a good pass catcher. It's Jerick McKinnon out of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, McKinnon has ties to Mike Kafka, who's on the Giants coaching staff. 7 years in the NFL. He's old as well, 30 years, but he's more of a pass-catching back at this point. McKinnon has 13 rushing touchdowns and 16 career receiving touchdowns, had a career-high 9 touchdown catches last year. And I think he can play that role for the Giants because Kafka does play a similar offense. I'd love to see McKinnon be the second running back. I think it's more likely the Giants address that position in the draft, but don't be surprised if they go out and sign Jerick McKinnon. Next up, wide receiver, and this is the position a lot of people want to talk about. I have 5 names and 1 or 2 flyers that I want to talk about. The first name, and look, this name's not going to excite anybody, but let's be realistic. This wide receiver class is not very wealthy. This is not a receiver class that you're going to get a bargain deal on. You're probably going to have to overpay for an average talent. So I look at DJ Chark here, and I see a guy who's just 26 years old. He scored 3 touchdowns and had over 500 receiving yards for the Lions last year. He's a vertical element who has a lot of size. The Lions, their future receivers are Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. They have Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond, who I think will both be back for Detroit to help out Jared Goff. I think Chark is the odd man out here. Only played in 11 games. His first 4 years were with the Jags, and people forget. In 2019, he had a Pro Bowl year. He had over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. So I think Chark is a guy who could really fit well in this offense. I know this might scare a lot of people because the vertical element with size reminds a lot of people of Kenny Golladay, and we know we're moving on from Kenny Golladay, but this receiver will cost a lot less money. He's not nearly as talented as Golladay was, and you don't know if you'll get that in the draft or even free agency. So I think you want to get Daniel Jones as many weapons as possible. I think Chark is a realistic option. Next up, a guy that I'd love to have, but I don't know if he fits the Giants, is Adam Thielen. Wide receiver, Minnesota Vikings released him after 9 seasons due to salary cap space issues. He's 32 years old, still has some gas left in the tank. This year, in an offense that's filled with receiving weapons, with Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, KJ Osborne, a lot of mouths to feed. Thielen had 70 catches for 716 yards and 6 touchdowns. Arguably the best available wide receiver. He's probably in that top 3 with Odell and Jacoby Myers. had 30 touchdown catches over the last 3 years. He had 14 in 2020. He had 10 in 2021. He had 6 this past year as a 2-time Pro Bowler. And this guy's an undrafted free agent in 2013. This will be a culture change for Adam Thielen. He's used to the cold weather up in Minnesota. That's where he played his college. That's where he's from. So would Thielen coming to the Giants be great? Yeah. But is there a connection? No, which is why I don't think the Giants sign Adam Thielen. But I'd love to have him and see if they could work something out. Next up, the guy that I think out of this list is the most likely to sign with the Giants is Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman out of the Kansas City Chiefs, second in the NFL in separation per route. He is an awesome, quick receiver. He's dealt with some injuries, but he's a guy that Patrick Mahomes liked a lot. He was supposed to be the number 2 wide receiver this season until injuries lingered him a little bit. Again, he was relatively healthy before this season, so I wouldn't worry too much. You want a receiver that will come in and know the system, and I think Mecole Hardman, out of this wide receiver list, is most likely to sign with the Giants. I would not mind at all adding him to a receiver core that features Shepard, Robinson, and Hodgins. So I think Mecole Hardman, there's a good chance he's in blue within the next few days. Another option is Allen Lazard from the Green Bay Packers. Young player, 27 years old, reliable possession receiver, not too much speed. Spent 5 years with the Packers, had 6 touchdowns this past season on 60 catches, starting 15 games. He played 89% of the offensive snaps for them. He had 8 touchdowns last year as well. This is another undrafted guy who kind of just got overlooked and made a nice career for himself with Aaron Rodgers. Again, this could be a guy the Giants say, hey, we want to make you our number 2 wide receiver. I could see this possibly falling through. 2 more, and one I forgot to put on the list, but it's Demarcus Robinson, who played for the Ravens this past year, also a Kansas City Chiefs guy of the past with Mike Kafka. That's a flyer for me. And, of course, you have to talk about Odell. We know the Giants, they met with his agent at the Combine along with about 10 to 12 other teams. He's 30 years old. He spent his first 5 years with Big Blue. Remember, he was drafted by the Giants in 2014. He fell off after he got traded to the Browns a little bit. Then he was traded to the Rams mid-season back in 2021. He won a Super Bowl with them. His numbers have declined since leaving the Giants, but remember, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 10-plus touchdowns in his first 3 years. And it's hard to believe Odell's entering his 10th NFL season. But Odell Beckham is clearly better than any receiver the Giants currently have on their roster. We know his off-the-field antics that he's performed. He's never in any league. Probably just a clown that a lot of people, including myself, haven't been the biggest fan of. But I think he has grown up a little bit and matured, and you might want to consider working something out with him, even if it's on a multi-year basis. We'll have to see what happens. I just hope that no chemistry is ruined here. I'm very skeptical about this one, but the talent is something that you cannot ignore. And I'll be honest with you, if Odell signs with the Giants, I really won't be too mad. If this was 2 years ago, I would have been furious, but Odell's guy you have to look at. Giants have been linked to signing a tight end, and that's the next position I want to talk about. This is the first guy I want to talk about, and I would love to sign this guy. Now, there are flaws to signing this guy, but there are a lot of positives that I think outweigh those negatives in Mike Gesicki, a Jersey kid himself, drafted by the Dolphins in 2018. He's just 27 years old. Very good tight end, above average, who's underutilized with the Dolphins last season. Gesicki had 5 touchdowns this past season. Through 5 years, he's only missed 1 NFL game. The durability is there. The one con of Gesicki, his blocking is atrocious. He tries, but it's just not good. He's going to have to improve his blocking. He may have to do some work with O-line coach Bobby Johnson if the Giants do go out and get him. But I think there's a very high chance. You look at this class and of offensive weapons, and Gesicki might be the most talented. And that includes all the wide receivers, maybe outside of Odell. Gesicki is the best tight end on the market. Do the Giants go ahead and sign him? I don't know. They just drafted Bellinger last year. I think if the Giants do sign a tight end, it might be more of a blocker who's an upgrade. Again, you use a tight end in this league, but you want weapons offensively, and Gesicki's a weapon that could help Daniel Jones. You just spent a lot of money in your quarterback. You want to build around him. Gesicki also grew up as a Giants fan. That's a little fun fact. This next guy I talked about last year, it's Maxx Williams. Again, 28 years old, just had 3 catches last year, purely a blocker, just played 21% of the offensive snaps. I think he'd be an upgrade over Chris Myrick. You can punch him in there with Lawrence Keeger, who the Giants have, developed some trust in as a receiving tight end, and then Daniel Bellinger as the 1. I don't think it would be a terrible option for the Giants to get Maxx Williams. Granted, this is a former second-round draft pick. And then the last option, Buffalo ties Tommy Sweeney, 7th-round pick in 2019, pure blocker. Could be a fit. Links to Dable. All right, next up, we have the linebacker position. There's a lot of guys we have to go through, but there's Tremaine Edmunds, played with Buffalo Bills for 4 years, just 24 years old, the 1st-round pick in 2018. He's a Pro Bowler, 2019-2020. He's a tackling machine who can play all 3 downs. Off-ball linebacker, 2-time Pro Bowler, over 100 tackles in all 5 of his NFL seasons. His rookie season was absolutely insane, and his height is incredible at 6'5". Here's the problem. So many teams will be able to throw more money at him than the Giants. Do not think Tremaine Edmunds will be a Giant. I would be shocked if he signed. I'd love it, but there are more linebackers that I think will better fit this team. Next up, we have David Long. Not as good as Edmunds, but young kid, 25 years old, 14th ranked interior linebacker on PFF. Last year, grade slightly above 76, had 86 tackles, 2 picks, 4 years with the Titans, started 12 games last year, former 6th-round pick. I could see this happening. I think he's a good fit. I really do. He's quick, maybe a little undersized, but again, you have Micah McFadden and Darian Beavers. You have young players, but you have to upgrade at the position. You absolutely have to upgrade. You can't just sit there and rely on the draft. You have to upgrade this position in free agency. Next up, the player that I think the Giants will most likely target, and the guy that I think that most likely fits the Giants' defensive scheme. Surprise, surprise, it's not TJ Edwards, it's Drue Tranquill from the Los Angeles Chargers. 26 years old, a 4th-round pick in 2019, 6'2", 234 build. Had 146 tackles this past season, along with 5 sacks and a forced fumble. Had 10 tackles for loss. These are all career highs for him. He had a career best year, 8 quarterback hits. He's an above-average linebacker, but he is an excellent pass-protecting linebacker. He has been ever since he's played at Notre Dame. Overall, he's above average, but he's already played in a 3-4. I mean, he fits Wink's scheme perfectly. Pass protection, linebacker, a guy who can blitz the quarterback as well. Again, struggles in the run game at times, but I think Tranquill would be a gem. If I'm the Giants, I'm dialing up Drue Tranquill tomorrow and offering him $8 to $10 million a year to play for the Giants. Next up, another guy who could fit is Alex Anzalone of the Detroit Lions, former New Orleans Saint as well. Anzalone is 28. Started all 17 games for the first time of his career. Had a career-high 125 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 6 passes defended, which is impressive for him. Former 3rd-round pick 6 years ago. Anzalone is a decent option. Wouldn't be my first pick, but again, there's a lot of good inside linebackers in this free agency class, so I'd keep an eye on him. And then the last one, there's already been reports by Ryan Dunleavy that the Giants are really invested in this guy and that there's a good chance they sign him, is TJ Edwards. Played for the Philadelphia Eagles this past season. 159 tackles, one of the league leaders in the NFL. Monster, absolute monster. He's an undrafted free agent too. Had a couple sacks this past year. Really good in the run game. Average in pass protection and pass coverage, I should say. He can play in multiple schemes. He can play in a 4-3, 3-4, you name it. He's good if he's the only linebacker on the field. Pure Mike linebacker. I would love TJ Edwards on the Giants. I think it's between TJ Edwards and Drue Tranquill. I think there's an outside chance of David Long. If you asked me a week or 2 ago, I would have 100% said David Long is the guy. But now, the more I think about it, TJ Edwards, Drue Tranquill, those two make a little more sense than David Long. A couple more. I know we're going heavy on the defense here. We're going to defensive tackle, and there's three guys I have in mind. Khalen Saunders from the Kansas City Chiefs, big man, 324 pounds. He's 26 years old, former third-round pick. The Giants need to beef up their interior defensive line. They need to pair somebody with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. They're going to let Justin Ellis and Nick Williams walk in free agency. They really need to upgrade this position. The Giants could not stop the run this past season. Dalvin Tomlinson. I'd love to have Dalvin back. That would make my year. Former Giants second-round pick back in 2017. He spent the last 2 years in Minnesota. He's still just 29 years old. He hasn't really fallen off. 14th ranked interior defensive lineman on PFF. Again, a guy who had a career year with the Giants in 2020. The Giants did not bring him back due to the financial market of the offseason. But again, the Giants wound up spending the most money that free agency in the NFC. So a little confused there why they didn't bring him back. They're able to spend money elsewhere, but it's an option. Corners. This is a guy, if you want to get a corner, this is a guy to get. And Jonathan Jones, 29 years old, New England Patriot, another UDFA in 2016. He posted a career best 4 interceptions, 11 passes defended, and 3 forced fumbles. He's played with the Patriots for 7 years. This is a guy who filled in the shoes of J.C. Jackson when he left for the Chargers this past season. If you want to go out and get a solid CB2, this might be a guy you want to look at. He's a pure upgrade over Fabian Moreau. William Jackson is another guy, 30 years old, Pittsburgh Steelers, first-round pick back in 2016. He only played in 4 games for Washington this past year. This is an under-the-radar guy. Again, the Giants, if they sign a corner in free agency, it'll purely be a cheap CB2. I don't think they're going to invest a lot of money into the position. Finally, one more player, former Buffalo Bill, and I know I'm sure you all want my opinion on him, it's Jordan Poyer. Jordan Poyer, 32-year-old safety. Again, if the Giants do let Julian Love walk, this is a solid replacement option, a guy that Xavier McKinney can learn under. He was an all-pro last year. He did miss 5 games, but over his career, he's been remarkable. 22 picks, 44 passes defended in just 6 seasons with the Bills. 12 games started last year, 4 picks, 8 passes defended. So he's getting a pick every 3 games for Buffalo that he plays. Again, good single high. He can play box. He can play deep. You can put him wherever you want. Real solid plus run defender. I mean, these are some guys that I really think the Giants could attack in NFL free agency. And I want to thank you all for watching my video. I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section. Who do you think are players that the Giants should and will target? If I had to make a prediction, I truthfully think the Giants are going to go ahead and get Drue Tranquill, Mecole Hardman are my 2 most likely players to go to Big Blue. I do think there's a chance they do bring Dalvin Tomlinson back as well. We'll see. But folks, want to appreciate our sponsor, BetUS. If you're interested in sports betting or gambling, you can sign up with our promo code below at Join125. They're an awesome website. You can bet on the go, anywhere, anytime. With this promo code, you get a 125% sign-up bonus. That's BetUS, where the game officially begins. Folks, appreciate you all watching one more time. Make sure to check us out on all of our social media on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Big Blue Avenue. We're at 450 subs. Let's keep that number upticking. Appreciate you all. Much love as always. Free agency, the tampering period starts tomorrow. I'm thrilled. Without further ado, let's go Big Blue.